Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to Sip and Share Wednesdays, where for a few minutes, I and maybe you will sip and I'll share. Now, my sharing is unique in a sense that my lifestyle, living here in Mexico, affords me the ability to maintain residence in a higher state of consciousness for longer periods of time. So, in doing so, I'm able to share insights with those souls who resonate with my light work in that way. So, on this whimsical Wednesday, I'd like to share what is ego. Now, last week, we discussed or laid, if you will, some foundation for who we are. And I like to review that because I went back and I listened to uh, the video and I saw where there were some discrepancies with how I went about laying that foundation as it relates to the wording. So before we move into what is ego, I like to review exactly how I laid the groundwork for who we are. So last week I stated that not to get hung up on words as it relates to the God of your understanding and the word that you use, be it Jehovah, Allah, God, Father, Creator, Supreme Being, Source Energy, which is my favorite, to go ahead and let those words integrate and resonate and be open to a different word meaning the same concept, especially as it relates to God. So, using the word that you use for the God of your understanding, let's lay that groundwork one more time for who we are. So, I said, now use your word and pay particular attention to the prepositions that's going to be used in this phrase that I asked you to let marinate last week. So here we go. Use your word. I'm going to use source energy because that's my word. Here we go. Source energy in me. The word in, emphasize. Expressed in form as me. So as experiencing itself through me and is me. Okay, that's what I asked you to let marinate last week. So we're going to say that one more time and then move into what is ego. All right, here we go. Source energy in me, expressed in form as me, is experiencing itself through me and is me. All right. And so it is. Now, we and our creator are one. Now, how did we get away from knowing this? How did we get away from knowing that phrase that we just said, God, source energy in me, expressed in form as me, is experiencing itself through me and is me? How do we get away from that? How do we get away from the knowing of that? Now, I wrote a book called traveling home together. My brand is Considerations of the Soul. But the book is that I wrote is Traveling Home Together. And it's what I would consider a primer or a handbook for New Earth living. And in this book, I introduce ego. So I want to read this to you. Instead of just trying to talk about it, it would be better for me if I go ahead and take a paragraph from the chapter called Listening and give you this understanding of ego. So I'm going to read this to you from my book, Considerations of the Soul presents Traveling Home Together. Okay, so listen up. There was one voice, and I'm adding today, one source, one consciousness within you when you were first born into this world. It had your undivided attention. As you grew into your humanness, a new voice introduced through your senses. A new voice was introduced through your senses. What you saw, heard, tasted, felt, and smelled drew you more and more into the physical world, and you lost touch with that non-physical connection. Now, I want to stop there because the word connection, my guides, my counsel has said to me that we are always connected. We are always connected. So I hesitate with that word now when I say that we lost a connection because we're always connected. But what we lost was our awareness, our alignment with, or, and we became unconscious. So we're always connected, but we did, after becoming so inundated through our senses with the physical world, we did lose or lost touch with our awareness or our alignment with that inner voice, that small voice, that source, that consciousness that we were born into this physical realm with. So I wanted to make that known. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So it says here, I wrote, you lost touch with that non-physical connection. You lost touch with your awareness. You lost touch with your alignment. You became unconscious. That your flesh clothed, that our flesh is now clothing. Okay. You also lost touch with the essence of who you really are as the world took over and the still small voice became smaller. The new, stronger voice that grew within and pretty much took over was that of your ego. Through programming and conditioning, the ego grew stronger and began running things internally. You attached and identified with the stories you were told about yourself. Those attachments became your belief systems, which determined how you perceive yourself in the world around you. Those perceptions have become the realities in which you have lived for many years. The true essence of you is just as present within as the ego. However, it can remain unheard. I want to say that again. The true essence of you is just as present as the ego. However, it can remain unheard. And when I say unheard, I mean unheard. You're unconscious of it. You're unaware of it. You're not in line with it. Because ego has strengthened itself through the years, through your programming and conditioning. Now, ego has its place. It does. In the backseat. Ego has its place. It has a general purpose. But get this, it's not the general. It has its general purpose in the backseat, but it's not the general. So what is ego? What is that general purpose of ego? I want you to remember these three things that ego is. Ego, number one, is a built-in defense system. It's that flight or fight that's innate inside of you, that is triggered when certain situations and circumstances, of course, occur. You move into that fight or flight segment. That's ego. Number two, ego is a thought producer. Ego will produce thoughts. Ego will produce stories. Ego will run programs, old programs. Ego will run conditioning. It is a thought producer. It will produce a thought. That's what ego does. And number three, ego is a thought processor. It will process the thought that's produced through it. Ego is three things. It is a defense mechanism. It is a thought producer. It is a thought processor. It has a general purpose. It shelves our biases, our perceptions, and preferences unique to our own experiences. That's what ego is. All right. So remember that. Anybody, what is ego? Ego is three things. It's a defense system. It's a thought producer, and it's a thought processor. That's what ego is. Now, next week, we're going to get into who's getting the most airtime. Is it ego or is it your soul self? That's next week. So make sure to click like and share this video with someone you think will resonate with this topic. And also subscribe to my channel. And tomorrow on my website, www.considerationsofthesoul.com, is a new blog post from my blog, Growing and Flowing. So hit my website up and check out that new blog. It's called Settling. Your Soul Cries Out. And it does if you settle. So thank you so much for tuning in and moving along with me. I think that I'm starting to get a rhythm to this, to my sip and share. That was the timer. I don't want to go past 15 minutes. So I think I'm beginning to get a rhythm. So I hope to see you next week as we delve further into what are we listening to? Ego or our soul self? And until next week, one light. I heard it. You said one love. Good job. One light, one love. See you next week.